Certainly, I mean, I can tell you many of us watched that speech with great interest here from the State Department, and I would imagine across U.S. government as well.
What I wanted to ask is about the statements made by President Putin this morning regarding these new weapons that he said had been tested. I'm wondering what what the diplomatic reaction to this is from this building.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I can tell you many of us watched that speech with great interest here from the State Department, and I would imagine across U.S. government as well.
The U.S. machine is working at full speed. The conveyor is running full speed. They've deployed missile defense systems in Alaska and California. As a result of NATO eastward expansion, they've set up new 2 areas in Romania and Poland. The range of interceptor missiles will keep growing. They have plans to deploy such missiles in Japan and South Korea. There is also a sea-based group of 5 cruisers and 30 destroyers deployed in the areas close to Russia. Without any exaggeration, I can say that they are working on this project at full speed. So what have we done, apart from protesting and warning? How did Russia respond to this challenge?
One of the things I want to make clear, and we've talked about this type of thing before, that we're not going to react to every word or idea that world leaders express. It was certainly unfortunate to have watched the video animation that depicted a nuclear attack on the United States. I mean, that's something that we certainly did not enjoy watching. We don't regard that as the behavior of a responsible international player. So I just want to make that very clear. We just don't consider it to be responsible.
So you are reacting to you say you're not going to react to, but you feel you feel compelled in this case.
Compelled to say, look, we saw it, and we don't think it's responsible. We don't think that kind of imagery, seeing the portrayal in a cheesy video of that kind of attack being conducted on the United States as being a responsible action.
Responded to the broadcast of an animation,
Correct.
Which is, after all, a cartoon, but not to the substance, which is Russian claims of having new weapon systems that could threaten the United States. So can you respond to that? For
Yes.
example, is it not the case that at least one of these weapon systems has been under development or was under development many decades ago and then went away?
Okay, let me start with that. That is certainly a concern of ours. President Putin has confirmed what the United States government has known for a long time, that Russia has denied prior to this, that Russia has been developing destabilizing weapon systems for more than a decade in direct violation of its treaty obligations. President Trump understands the threats facing America and our allies in this century and is determined to protect our homeland and preserve peace through strength. U.S. defense capabilities are and will remain second to none. We have a new defense budget that's over $700 billion. We believe that our military will be stronger than ever. The president's nuclear posture review addressed some of this. It made it clear that we're moving forward to modernize our nuclear arsenal and ensure that our capabilities remain unmatched.
Can you read the first sentence again, which I didn't quite understand? Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Can you read the first sentence again,
Sure,
which I didn't understand?
President Putin has confirmed what the United States government has long known, but which Russia has denied previously. Russia has been developing destabilizing weapon systems for more than a decade in direct violation of its treaty obligations.
And which treaties is it violating?
Some of these that are not in compliance would be the INF treaties. That's an area of particular concern to us. Since 2014, they've not been in compliance with that. They've been developing intermediate-range ground-launched cruise missiles in direct violation of the INF treaty.
What are you going to do about that?
That is not for me to say what the United States is going to do about that. We continue to have conversations across the various agencies and departments in the U.S. government.
Is there an indication that those weapons that they showed today are actually operational?
That's not something I'm able to answer. Some of those would be intelligence matters. Some of those would come out of the Department of Defense.
But I mean, but these weapons, like you said, that confirm what we've long been known that he's developing. But do you believe that they've actually developed them, or they're still in the development process?
You know, some of this is new information that we are seeing today. Some of this is information that we've been tracking for some time. Some of this information the United States government will not be able to publicly provide to you, and that's part of it today. Okay? Hi,
Does the
Rich.
Secretary plan on speaking with Foreign Minister Lavrov specifically in regard to this morning's speech? And does this morning's speech change at all the U.S. attempt to try to work with Russia in certain areas or change this relationship, or is this seen as sort of election year politicking on his
Well,
part?
I think you have to consider the audience that Putin sat before today when he made that announcement, and consider the fact that it's basically his equivalent of our State of the Union address. We also would note that there is an election that's coming up. So we think he was playing to the audience, certainly. In terms of Secretary Tillerson and whether or not he plans to speak with him about it, that I'm not sure. This is something that we have many conversations with the Russian government, not just here in the United States between the Secretary and his counterpart, but with other officials as well. Okay? Lori, let's move on.
Yeah,
Okay.
on another aspect of Russia which Kurdistan is interested in, General Votel said Tuesday that Russia plays both fireman and arsonist in Syria. Is that a position you would agree with?
Yes, I mean, I think I've been pretty clear, as has the Secretary, about Russia's responsibility in Syria. Russia has a responsibility to stop Syria and to stop aiding Syria in attacking its own people. We look at the situation in eastern Ghouta today, since there was the UN ceasefire that was voted upon unanimously on Saturday. On Saturday. And the fighting continues. They are continuing to kill innocent civilians. We have seen more than 100 people die since Saturday alone. This ceasefire is clearly not working. Russia has called for these joke-like humanitarian corridors. Russia needs to just do what the United Nations had agreed to and voted on, and that is a countrywide ceasefire. This is not working. Russia's responsible for this in part because they continue to train and equip and work with the Syrian government. We've been watching that very carefully. It's a tremendous concern of the U.S. government.
And he said that there needs to be more pressure on Russia to, do the right thing in Syria. Are you thinking of anything now that would constitute pressure on Syria that General Votel said was necessary?
In terms of pressuring Syria or in terms of pressuring Russia? We are having conversations with the Russian government. I can tell you that. The United Nations is having a series of meetings where they're talking with other countries, like-minded countries, on exactly what is going on in Syria right now. You recall the Secretary signed on to the chemical weapons program that France put together about a month ago or so. They are expected to hold their next round of conversations sometime in March, sometime later this month. So there are a lot of different ways that we are keeping a close eye on this. What we do, I've said this before out of this building, is diplomacy. We will continue to reach out to many like-minded countries. Let me remind you of the 15 countries that signed on to the ceasefire resolution over the weekend. We're having lots of conversations with those countries that share our concerns.
Thank you. If I could just ask
Yeah.
you about Iraq, the Parliament passed a resolution.
Hold on. Let's stick with anything related to.
You mentioned something
Hold on.
about a joke,
Excuse me.
humanitarian corridor. Is it?
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about that.
So-
Let's stick on
and
Syria
you-
for right
and
now.
you're saying that the ceasefire is not holding?
I think I just
So
said
what-
the
I
ceasefire is
understand. So
clearly not
what are you
working.
proposing?
And here's the thing. This idea of a so-called humanitarian corridor, which is a narrow little banner that if you look at the video that you see on TV, people aren't using that. Why are people not using that? Well, it didn't work in Aleppo very well, did it? People are afraid to use it. They are afraid if they try to leave eastern Ghouta that they could be conscripted into working with Bashar al-Assad, that they someday may not be able to go home or they could be killed. People are fearful of that. That does not go far enough. The idea that Russia is calling for a so-called humanitarian corridor, I want to be clear, is a joke. What needs to happen instead is a nationwide ceasefire that was voted upon unanimously at the United Nations last Saturday. 15 countries supported it. Let me remind you, so did Russia. So did Russia. I want to be clear also that there are a few exemptions to that ceasefire, so no one tries to parse my words. Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS. Those are the exemptions. Okay. There are people in mind and in line for those types of positions. Perhaps you've just not heard about it yet. Okay, we've got to go.
I have a question on Iraq, Heather, please.
I will talk to you after the
No,
briefing.
the
then.
Iraqi parliament voted Wednesday to call for a timetable for the Iraqi for